So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and I'm also going to put this link in the chat. So what we're going to do to start is I'm going to start with Nearpod and then get into Flocabulary. And I want you to join my Nearpod lesson from a student perspective. So you can either use the link that I just posted in the chat, or you can go to join.nearpod.com and enter this code. I would love it if you could see my screen that I'm sharing and the Nearpod screen wherever you join at the same time. So that means you could use a phone, a tablet, or you can tab back and forth between tabs or windows, whatever works best for you. And I will be asking you to participate, so just warning you on that, but I won't put anyone on the spot. So I'll wait for just a second while you all are joining. And while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name's Talia Hoffman. I'm the regional manager here at Nearpod and Flocabulary for Northern and Central California. And I'm based in the Bay Area. I'm in Santa Clara. And I was a high school English teacher in Miami-Dade. And so a lot of the examples I'll give are often from that perspective. So just keep that in mind. And so I'm going to X out of this here. The code will remain up here if you're just joining. So again, you can use the link that I posted in the chat, or you can go to nearpod.com or join.nearpod.com and enter this code. And I see that 4 people are already in my session. Now we're up to 5. So I'm going to give it just a second because it looks like there's 24 people in the Zoom. So we still are waiting on quite a few. And I'll go ahead and share that link again in the chat in case it got lost there. So you can always just use that link to join my session. So my goal for today is, if you didn't know, that you all will have access to Nearpod and Flocabulary for the remainder of the school year. And so I'm going to be showing you what Nearpod and Flocabulary are, how to use them, and kind of best practices for distance learning. So we're going to cover a lot in a short period of time, but the good news is we have daily public webinars, and I'll include all of that information for you to join if you, after this, you want a little more support. And then on Wednesdays, we have weekly California office hours. So this is an opportunity for you to drop in and get more individualized support there. So I'm up to 9 people, so I'm going to go ahead and get started just for time's sake. If you haven't joined yet, go ahead and join when you get a chance. And those of you who are in my session, if you want to take notes, or if you want this, a copy of this presentation afterwards, you can use the note feature. So on the right-hand side, you'll see a little notepad icon. If you click on that, then you can choose how you want your notes sent to you. And then after this presentation is over, you'll have access to this. And I did include some resources you may want to go back to. And this is also a feature students will be able to utilize when they're in a Nearpod lesson. So I'm actually going to skip this for time's sake. And I am curious, you know, as I get into Nearpod and Flocabulary, what kind of prior knowledge you all are coming in with. So on your student device where you joined, if you want to go ahead and answer this question for me, this helps me kind of tailor this presentation to meet your needs, or the majority. So what you're seeing on your student device is the poll, which is where you're answering this question. What you're seeing on my screen is the teacher view. So here I'm going to get that instant feedback. I can see what your answers are. I can see what the class as a whole is answering. And so it looks like nobody's used Nearpod before. So that's exciting for me because I get to show you the magic. I can also go ahead and share out those results. Keep in mind, everything I'm showing you throughout this presentation, these are all tools you can embed in any Nearpod presentation. Okay, so it looks like Nearpod's going to be pretty new to everyone. And then what about vocabulary? So if you can go ahead and answer this, because I'm going to try to get to both today. And it looks like we now have 36 people in the Zoom, and I only have 11 people in my Nearpod lesson. So if you haven't had a chance to join, you can use the link I posted in chat. Otherwise, you can go to nearpod.com and enter this code. Okay, so vocabulary you all are a lot more familiar with. So that is helpful for me. So I'll try to, focus a lot on Nearpod since it's brand new to all of you, but I will touch on vocabulary as well. So starting with Nearpod, what is Nearpod? So Nearpod is a tool where teachers can either create or curate interactive lessons. And throughout that, rather than students just sitting and watching these slides go by, they're actively participating. And you'll get a sense of that. Similar to like the polls, we have other activities as well. And teachers are going to get real-time feedback if they're doing this in a live lesson or post-session reports. So they'll have all of that data on hand. So there's two ways to launch a Nearpod lesson. Right now I'm modeling for you what a live lesson could look like in a virtual setting. So you would use Nearpod in collaboration with a video conferencing tool such as Zoom or Google Meets. All of your students would join at the same time, and they can actually join. So we do integrate with Google Classroom, or you can share out the lesson any of these ways for the students to join. They would join the lesson, and then you as the teacher are controlling the pace. So you'll push out the lesson to the students, and they'll all be on the same page at the same time. The other option is more of our asynchronous option, and that gives students the ability to go through lessons on their own time. And you as a teacher will still be able to monitor your students' progress through those post-session reports. I've seen teachers do all kinds of creative things here, like a choose your own adventure, where students, choose what lessons they want to use, or creating like a bingo card or tic-tac-toe where students click on different lessons to complete that. So lots of ways to utilize that as well. And so to start with, since Nearpod is so new to all of you, I want to show you what a Nearpod lesson could look like. Keep in mind, this is just pieces of this lesson. I'm not going to show you a full lesson. And this lesson is geared towards middle school science. And so one way that you could start a lesson is checking for prior knowledge, right? That's kind of best practice in teaching. And one way to do that is through a Collaborate board. So I'm going to have you all engage with this. Whenever you have a Collaborate board, you can choose to approve student comments before they're posted if you're worried about maturity or not. For this sake, I trust that you'll be on task. So if you want to go ahead on your student screen, answer this. So you can type a response. You can also use Google Safe Search here to search for images. And try to post something here. So, and I'll actually join on my phone so I can show you all what this looks like too. Awesome. Perfect. So Miss N and Christy have already figured this out, and Dave. So what you're going to see on the student view is you're going to see the posts, but you'll see they're anonymous. Whereas from a teacher perspective, you can see the names. You'll also have the ability to delete posts or rearrange them. So you can rearrange them by alphabetical order, time, or most liked. So you can see there's lots of ways you could utilize this. Kim found my favorite image. And so this is just one example. So start to think about how you could utilize this in your classroom. Perfect. I love seeing the responses coming in. And just for time's sake, I'm going to move us along pretty quickly. And so I don't even know what day of social distancing we're on at this point, but I think we all could use a field trip. And with Nearpod, you can embed, we have over 350,000 VR field trips to pull from. So for this particular lesson, I would have students explore this image and identify different forms of electricity and one example of static electricity. Now, you could use, you could take your students to a beach or to the woods for like an SEL moment. I'm a former high school English teacher, so I might take my students to the setting of a text. So there's lots of ways to engage and utilize this for different areas. And I see in the chat there was a question if this is good for science lessons. So I'm actually showing you an example of a science lesson, and I'll show you how you can filter by subject area as well. So then you might want to go into an open-ended question. And we actually have the ability for students to use audio instead of a written response. So for the younger students or for EL or SPED students, it makes it more accessible. If you want to go ahead and type something here, you don't have to answer the question. You can say hi, you can tell me how your weekend was, what your Starbucks order is, whatever works for you. I just want you to engage with this and see what this looks like from a student perspective as well as a teacher perspective. So Sophia's on top of it, the first answer in, and she answered the question. So as a teacher, I'm gonna see my participation percentage. Obviously, we would all aim for as close to 100% as possible. So I'm gonna wait a little longer till I get a few responses. And so I'm gonna see the responses coming in. And then I can go ahead and share out different responses. So let's say I want to share out an example and maybe a non-example and have a conversation around that. I could go ahead and share that out here. And now on your student device, you're going to see this example, but you'll notice there's no name associated with it. So you maintain that safe space for all students to participate. Now, I know right now it can be kind of difficult navigating between the student view and the teacher view, the screen I'm sharing. The thing is, when your students are in a Nearpod lesson, you don't need to be sharing your screen because everything's pushed out to their student view device. So for this purpose, I am sharing my screen so you can see what a teacher view looks like. But when students are in a Nearpod lesson, they just need to be on that one screen. And so Nearpod and Flocabulary are one company, and within Nearpod, you can embed any video, whether it's from YouTube or a video you create, but you can also embed Flocabulary videos, so everything's in one place. So if you've never seen a Flocabulary video before, you're in for a treat. We use hip hop and music to teach academic vocabulary across content areas. So a common misconception is it's just for ELA. That is not the case, so I'm actually going to show you a science example. I did use vocabulary when I was a high school teacher, and my high schoolers loved it. And then you can see how it can be so engaging and exciting for elementary or middle. So it's really good for all age levels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you watch this on your own device. And so just make sure that you're muted. I'll give you just a couple minutes to watch this, and then I'll bring us back together in like a minute and a half. Okay, so is this working for everyone? I'm seeing that some people are having trouble with this. So I'm wondering if maybe if you're having trouble, maybe you're on the student screen. I mean the teacher screen, because I'm not playing it on the screen I'm sharing. I want you to play it on your student device. So I'll go ahead and move us along because I'm not sure. Okay, so Peter said it is working. So it might just be that you're on the wrong screen or something like that. Okay, but for time's sake, I am gonna move us along and I will take you into Flocabulary to kind of show you how you can access those lessons in Flocabulary as well. But I did want you to kind of get a glimpse of Flocabulary in Nearpod. So we call Nearpod single tab teaching because you can put everything into this one lesson, push it out, and your students don't have to navigate all these different websites and apps and all of that stuff. It's all in one place. And I saw some questions about how to make this more suitable for younger students. You can actually add audio to any slide. You can use more images, and we do have several pre-created lessons for younger students. And then you could see like in the written response, you could have students submit audio instead of written responses. Here's an example of a matching pairs activity. I'll have you engage with this. What you'll do is you'll click on the image and then click on the term that matches the image. You can add and remove timers to any activity in Nearpod. So for time's sake, I am adding a timer. And you can do this however you want to pace your class. And so again, you'll click on the term and then click on the image that matches the term. On your student view, and I see several of you have gotten started. So again, as a teacher, I'm gonna get that real-time feedback. I'm gonna see how many you got right and how many matches you got and how many tries it took you to get that many matches. And then I'll have all of this data on hand in my post-session report. So I can go back and use it for grading purposes and evaluations. So you can imagine for younger students, maybe you would have them match two images or an image and a word or whatever it might be. Okay, so I see that some of you are having trouble with this, like participating in this. It's probably because you're just
Talia, I think that your microphone is not working.
Okay, I'll do it this way.
Okay.
Now you should be able to hear me, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I guess I got like an emergency alert from public safety and it messed with my speaker. Anyways, I will continue. So if you're having trouble engaging with this, it's probably just because you're seeing my shared screen. You actually need to join my lesson either using the link or the code to be able to engage with this. So moving right along, we have these third-party integrations. So these are already available to you within Nearpod. So you can add any of these things to your Nearpod presentation. And so, for example, we built out this lesson in partnership with PhET. And so on your student device, you can actually engage with this PhET simulation. If you've never used PhET before, it's a really cool tool. They have math and science simulations, which is really handy, especially for distance learning right now. And again, you can imagine this way students don't have to go to all of these different websites and tab out, and you lose half of them in the process. And so if you are already using other tools, we do integrate with them. So we have like a Flipgrid integration, so you can actually embed your grid directly into Nearpod. So that's really cool. You can also add like any website into Nearpod. So again, everything's in one place through this one lesson. I'm gonna skip this and take you to a dry activity. So this is another activity that I'd say makes it really accessible for all students. You can use this activity in a variety of ways. If you want to go ahead and just draw like a smiley face on the balloon, or you can answer the question if you're a science teacher or an overachiever. But I just want you to try drawing with this activity. And again, you would need to be in my Nearpod lesson to be able to engage with this. I see there's only about 19 people in my lesson and about 46 people in the Zoom. So that tells me a lot of you are just seeing my screen, in which case you aren't able to participate. So as a teacher, when I have a draw activity, I'll see in real time my students' progress, what they're working on, and then what they've submitted. You can imagine you could use this for math, have students work out a math problem. You could have students graph using this or label something. For ELA, have students annotate a text. So lots of ways to utilize this. You can have students practice writing out their words for the younger students. And then I'll see all the responses, and I can go ahead and share out an example again, or a non-example, however you want to utilize it. Okay, so you would need to actually like tab out or use another window or something to get into another screen to join Nearpod. But I'm actually going to finish up here in just a second, and then I'll take you into the Nearpod lesson library and stuff. So at that point, you wouldn't need to be in my Nearpod lesson. So the last thing I want to show you real quickly is what a quiz looks like within Nearpod. So for those of you that are in my Nearpod session, if you want to go ahead, you can just answer A to all of them. You don't have to worry about getting it right. I just want you to see what this is like to engage with. So again, I'll see in real time everyone's responses. I'm seeing how my class is doing as a whole, and all of this I'll have on hand in my post-session reports. So I'll wait just a second for most people to finish up. And all of these activities I'm showing you can be done in a live lesson like what we're doing right now, or in a student-paced lesson, so a student would go through on their own time. And so for time purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and share out the results. So now if you're in my session on your student screen, you should see what you got right, what you got wrong, and the correct answer. And if students are doing this in a self-paced mode, once they've submitted their answers, it will automatically take them to this screen. We also integrate with Immersive Reader, so that's another option for the younger students where it actually provides text-to-speech to make that more accessible. And so I just want to real quickly share my contact information with you all. So as you're exploring Nearpod and or Flocabulary, feel free to email me if you have any questions, or call me or text me or tweet at me, because I'm here to support you. The last two things I've included here is our live webinar schedule. So these are going to be more in-depth webinars for you to explore Nearpod. I highly encourage you, if Nearpod's brand new to you, and or if technology is something new or to you for teaching, to go to the Digital Instruction for Nearpod Beginners webinar. And you can always register for these, and if the timing doesn't work, then you'll get the full recording afterwards. I've also included here a link where you can register for our Wednesday office hours. So this is an opportunity for you to drop in. You don't have to be there the whole time, but it's for you to get more individualized support as you start exploring Nearpod and or Flocabulary. At this point, I'm actually going to take you into a Nearpod account so you can see what it looks like. So if you did join my Nearpod lesson from a student view, you no longer need that open. I just want you to be able to see my screen at this point. So on my screen, you're gonna see what a Nearpod account looks like when you first log in. It's gonna take you to your lesson library. So this is where all of the lessons you've either created or downloaded live. Yours will probably be empty if you've never used Nearpod before. And once we've added you to the district license, then you'll have full access to everything I'm about to show you. So over here, sorry, I clicked that too quickly before I was able to show you. On the left-hand side, you'll see where it says Nearpod Lesson Library. This is where all of our pre-created lessons live, and this is the best place to start if you're new to Nearpod. So you click here, and there's thousands of lessons that are ready to teach and are available to you. And there's a few ways to search for those lessons. So at the top, you're gonna see more of like our trending lessons. So obviously right now, a lot of them are focused on at-home learning. You can search by subject area, like the top lessons by different subject areas, or all of these different ways. So let's say you really love simulations or Desmos or Newsella, you can just find lessons that we created with these publishers. But my favorite way to search for lessons is actually over here on the left-hand side. So here you can search by standards. So obviously California, you can search by subject area and grade level. So for those of you that were looking for lessons for younger students, we have them available to you. You can even get more granular and search for specific strands or resource type. And then over here, you're gonna see all of the lessons that match your search. And as you keep scrolling down, it's gonna keep loading more lessons. Now keep in mind, there are thousands of lessons here, so you probably wanna get more specific. So here, maybe I wanna teach about fractions. So when I do that, now it's gonna give me a more manageable number of lessons. You'll notice our lessons are created either in-house by our Nearpod team, in partnership with our publishers such as LearnZillion or Desmos or Newsella, or we have a handful of teachers that serve as consultants and submit their lessons to us and then we vet them. That's all to say that everything you'll find in our Nearpod lesson library has been vetted. It's research-based best practices, standards aligned, all of that. So I see a question about how you will access your Nearpod account. So we're actually working with Kelith on getting you all added to the license. We're just gonna use your email addresses to add you, and then once you've been added, you can actually just go to nearpod.com and log in using your Oakland email address, and then you will have access. I'm gonna put my headphones back on because someone's mowing the lawn. So let's see here. So I'll just keep using this audio. I apologize for that. I don't know why it's not working. And then your other part of your question was, do students log in? So students actually don't have Nearpod accounts. So they're just gonna join either using that link or that code or through Google Classroom. So they don't need their own accounts.
So once I get here to the lessons, I can go ahead and hover over them, and it's going to give me an overview of what that lesson's about. Down here, I can click on Preview Lesson. And then when I do that, on the right-hand side, I'm actually going to see the specific standards this lesson aligns to. I can go ahead and go through this lesson. And you'll notice these are like really ready to teach lessons. So this one has your teacher guide, your essential questions, your learning objectives. So I can go through here, see if this is a lesson I want to utilize. You'll notice it already has all of that interactivity built in. So all of those activities that you engaged with in my example are already created here. If this was a lesson I'd want to utilize, I could go ahead and add to my library. So Peter, your students don't have accounts. So I'll show you how you can share these lessons with your students, but they'll just access it through a link or through Google Classroom or using the code. Okay, so once I've downloaded my copy of this lesson, now I can use this as is. As you can see, it's like really a full lesson. And so if I were to do that, I could just go ahead and launch it as a live lesson, which is like the example I showed you. So I would launch it as a live lesson. And for those of you who are asking how students can access this lesson, they would either go to join.nearpod.com and enter this code, or you could send it any of these ways. So maybe you would just email all of your students, or if you have Google Classroom, you can push out the lessons through Google Classroom. Or if you're doing it a live lesson with like Zoom or something like that, I recommend just copying the link and putting it in chat and then having your students access it that way. So now I've launched it as a live lesson. My students would join any of those ways and I'm ready to go. The other option is you can go ahead and launch it as a student-paced lesson. So this would be if you wanted your students to just go through it in their own time. And again, I would launch it, it would generate a code. I can share it any of these ways with my students. I can choose how long I want that code to be active for. And then I can go back in here and view my students' progress. So see like how they're doing on the quiz, how they did on the different activities. The last option is, let's say I like this lesson, but maybe I already have a lesson on this topic and I want to add some of my own slides to this. I can go ahead and edit this. So all of our lessons are editable, and you're only editing your copy of the lesson. So you're not going to break Nearpod or anything. You're just editing your copy. And so now, if I go to edit this lesson, I can do whatever I want with this lesson. First of all, you can see all of the interactivity that's already built into this lesson, which is really awesome because you don't have to do that. But if I do want to edit it, I can click and drag to rearrange things. I can delete slides. If I already have like a PowerPoint on this topic and I want to add some of my own slides, I could just drag and drop that here and it would show up at the end, and then I can rearrange things. I can also add new slides. So let's say right here in between slide 4 and 5, I want to add a quiz. So I would just click in between the two slides, click on Add Slide, and Add Activity. And right here, I would add a quiz. And so now I can create my quiz. I can save it. And you can see here, you can add audio or video or anything to this quiz. So if you wanted to add that audio instruction to it, you can. Save it. And now that's going to appear right where I put it. I could also add any of this content. So this is all of the content you already have available to you within Nearpod. So those PhET simulations, like the one we engaged with, these are already here for you to utilize. So maybe I want to use this area builder. I can go ahead and do that, and now that's going to be added to my lesson. So again, you can add any of this content, here, including the VR field trips or vocabulary videos, or any of the activities. So those were like those engaging activities that you participated in. Once I've made my changes, I would just go to save and exit. And then it's going to appear at the top of my lesson library. And again, I could launch it as a live lesson or a student-paced lesson. So once we get you all set up on the district trial, you will have access to all of these pre-created lessons. So I highly encourage you to utilize them. Don't think of this as like another thing you have to do. Think of this as a time saver and like a support system for you. So I recommend starting with just like those pre-created lessons. Maybe do like a build your own adventure for your students to go through different lessons on their own time. Then maybe try editing some of those lessons. The last option is you can create your own Nearpod lessons. And the way to do that is up here. You would click here and you would create lessons in Google Slides or lesson in Nearpod. I recommend creating lessons in Google Slides. So Peter, what you're seeing right now is, if you were to log in right now, we haven't added you all to the district trial yet. So you're seeing like a free version of Nearpod. And when you're logged in as a free user on Nearpod, there is a cost associated with each lesson. But once we get you into the district trial, you'll have full access to all of those lessons. So all of those lessons will be free. So definitely don't pay for any of the lessons right now because we're gonna get you all set up. Perfect. Okay, so my computer is loading. So once I go to create in Google Slides, should look super familiar because it's actually going to take you to Google Slides. I'm going to go back here because it's taking too long. Okay, so when I go to create lesson in Google Slides, it's going to take me to Google Slides. Awesome. I love all the positive comments. I'm sorry that my speaker's not working, so you're listening to the lawnmower outside. Connie, you should receive an email once it's been activated. I'll work with Kella to make sure that that gets all set up for you all, and that you'll be notified some way, either through him or somewhere else. Okay, so my Google Slides doesn't seem to be working, so I'll show you how you can create in Nearpod. So if you were to create in Nearpod, just like how you would edit a lesson, you could literally drag and drop your PowerPoint or PDF or whatever it is here. You can rearrange things, and then you can add any of that content or any of those activities. So you can really spend as long or as little on this as you want. Again, I recommend starting with those pre-created lessons because they're already there for you, or they will be once you're in the right account. So I'm gonna stop there for a second. Are there any questions about Nearpod? And I'll use my teacher wait time for a second. Awesome, so I love all the positive feedback. This is definitely a tool you kind of just need to get in there and start exploring. Okay, so I see how can students communicate with the teacher if they're not on Zoom? So what I recommend in that case is if you're gonna do a live lesson on Zoom, you would launch it as a live lesson, but then I would have students that aren't able to join to do a self-paced version of that lesson on their own time. So then you'll be able to see their progress in that way, but they wouldn't be like verbally communicating with you throughout it. Rachel, I see your question, like, do students need support getting started? They really shouldn't. Basically, as long as they have an easy way to access a lesson, whether it's through a link or whatever it might be, and they know how to access that lesson, once they're in there, it's super self-explanatory and they're just engaging with the different activities. This doesn't need to be used with Zoom. You could use it with any video conferencing tool if you're doing it for distance learning in a live lesson. Otherwise, if you just launch a live lesson, but you're doing it for distance learning, that wouldn't work because you wouldn't be able to communicate with your students. You could do it as a self-paced lesson, so then you wouldn't need the video conferencing tool, or obviously in person, but you would need to use a video conferencing tool in collaboration with Nearpod to do a live lesson. I do have like several different one-pagers I can share with you all. I can send that over to Khaled if that would be helpful, and then he can share that out. And Connie asked, does this work with Meet? Yes. So you would use it similarly. You would just be pushing out the lesson using the link or the code or whatever it might be. And then students would join on Meet and you could engage that way. Good questions. Okay. So let me see if my Google Slides is working now so I can show you real quickly what that looks like, if it will load. It's not looking promising. Anyways, so if you do create in Google Slides, you would just need to download the Nearpod add-on, and then when you're in Google Slides, you can go ahead and like Nearpodize your Google Slides presentation. So I'm gonna stop there for Nearpod. And again, I hope you see this more as like a resource and a support rather than like overwhelming another thing you have to do. I am now going to show you Flocabulary briefly because you all will have access to that as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and share that screen with you. So as I mentioned, Flocabulary uses hip hop and music to teach academic vocabulary across content areas. There's over 600 videos you can utilize. So when you log in, you'll get to a screen that looks like this. What you'll want to do is you'll want to add your classes. So there's a few ways to do that. If you have Google Classroom, that's the easiest way because you would just integrate this with Google Classroom and it would automatically add your students. Otherwise, you can create a class in Flocabulary. You would put a name, great, subject area. You can turn on Immersive Reader if you wanted. And then once I've created that class, I can share it out one of two ways. So I can invite my students to join by email, or I can have them use this class code. So they would just go to this website and use this code, and then they would be added to this class. So once I've created my classes, for example, here I have 3 students in my class, then maybe I want to use, up here you can search by subject area. So that's how you filter the videos. So maybe I want to teach about the United Nations. I can search there. It's going to pull up the lessons, and then I would go to it. Now, all of the videos are going to have these same resources. So the first thing you'll see is the video itself, and that you can actually assign, and I'll show you all of that. What I recommend is maybe start, if you are doing this like live with Zoom, you could play the video 1 or 2 times through and then put it in discussion mode. And so when you put it into discussion mode, it's going to stop at key points throughout the video and ask a discussion question. That's if you're doing it live. If you're just assigning the video for the student to watch on their own time, you can go ahead and assign it. You would pick your students to assign it to, and then you would choose what activities. So you would maybe just assign the video. The other things we have here for each video are all of these different vocab activities to really like deep teach that vocabulary. So the video is going to introduce them to the topic, it's going to introduce them to the vocab terms and all of that. And then here we're going to really review that. So you can do vocab cards where you're having your students practice using those vocabulary terms that are introduced. There's a vocabulary game. So this is a lot of fun where students will be answering questions, and as they get them right, it's going to add another instrument to the beat that it's playing. So it's kind of a fun way to keep them going and working on it. So for example, I don't know, I'm just guessing here. So here I am answering the questions. And then as I get them right, you can see here it's going to add another instrument. Then we have your standard read and respond as well as a quiz. And the last thing is our lyric lab, where we actually ask students to create their own rhyme or rap using the vocab terms from that video. So here's all the vocabulary that was introduced to them. And then here we're asking them to write their rhyme. And it will pop up with rhymes, rhyme generator for them. They can choose their beat. So that's a lot of fun and a good way to really check that they understood the terms that were taught. So again, I could assign any of these activities to my students. I could differentiate, so maybe this student needs to, here we go. I can pick my students. I can differentiate, so maybe your students that are more advanced might just watch the video and do the quiz and lyric lab, whereas your students that need that extra support, maybe you'd want to assign all of these activities. You can choose when they can start seeing the assignments and when the assignments due, and then you would create that assignment, and when the student logs in, they'll see it. When they answer, you'll get all of that data immediately. So you'll get all of that within vocabulary, so you don't need to grade anything, which is awesome. So that's a lot of information at once. I'm gonna look here to see if there's anything in the chat. I see David recommends upper grade loves the lyric lab. That's true. My students loved it. It's a lot of fun. Kimberly, yes. So you all will have access to vocabulary. I'm just going to reshare the vocabulary link with Khalith, and then he'll send that out to you all. So using that link, that's how you'll activate your trial. So hopefully within a few days, we'll have you all up and running on Nearpod and vocabulary. But again, I recommend, especially for Nearpod, definitely join one of our public webinars, come to our California office hours so we can really support you all as you get started. I'm also going to put my email address in the chat, so feel free to email me if there's anything you need. And yes, you will all, so the link's actually going to be like a universal link for all of Oakland. So any teacher in Oakland can utilize that link to activate their vocabulary trial. Vocabulary is not free, so everything we're sharing with you is free for you right now through the district, and then we have individual, school, and district pricing options. Any other questions I can answer for you all? Whether it's about Nearpod or Flocabulary. Okay, well, I'll stick around for a few minutes. So if those of you who have questions want to stick around, I can answer those for you. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week. We really do appreciate you all. So hopefully you'll get to celebrate or do something special for yourself, whatever that might be.
Thank you so much, Talia, for the presentation today. We really appreciate it. And we appreciate also just that you're offering these tools to us for free right now during the school closures. It's big support. So if you don't mind, Talia, maybe I can stay on with you for a few moments and we can just discuss the logistics of making sure that everyone has access. And to everyone else, thank you for joining today. We really appreciate you. As Talia said, happy Teacher Appreciation Week. And we'll sign off the official meeting. If you want to stay on right now and ask any additional questions, you can do that. And Talia and I are just going to have a discussion about logistics of making sure that you have access right now. So thank you so much and have a great day.